Hello, and welcome to She Leads Biotech, the podcast that celebrates women leaders in the bioscience space. I'm your host, Sharon Cox, CEO and Managing Director of CNA International, based right here in New York. And each week I'll be talking to women leaders about their work, their triumphs and challenges, providing invaluable insight into how women can unlock their superpowers and succeed on their own terms. So whether you're navigating your own career path in bioscience or you're passionate about science and innovation, I hope you're empowered and inspired by each episode. My guest today wanted to be an actor in high school, just like me, but a very astute physics instructor encouraged her down the science path. So while we'll never know if she could have been an Oscar winner, she has numerous accolades to her name, including being recognised as one of Fierce Pharma's most influential people in biopharma, who's committed to advancing improvements in women's healthcare. So please welcome Daré Bioscience President and CEO, Sabrina Johnson.
Sabrina, hello. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you.
I really appreciate you taking the time out to join us today. And we met a couple of months ago, very briefly, at the Bio 2024 conference. I have to say it was my first time in San Diego. Love San Diego. Just such a vibe.
It's a wonderful place.
Yeah,
What's not to love?
Yeah, I think I could happily settle there one day, but it was great fun. And what was interesting for me is that it was my first convention that I attended in the US. I didn't know anybody and nobody knew me because anybody I did know was at the ASCO conference.
Right.
And I thought, well, you know, what do I do? How do I kind of stand out? And I made the conscious decision for the whole convention, days and evenings, to wear orange because that's like my confidence colour.
Nice.
And it was kind of working in this sea of grey and black. People were like, hey, like the outfit. And the reason I say that is because when I went along to the session that you did, what was the perspectives from women power brokers?
Yes.
And the same thing struck me. There was this room of, grey and black and navy blue and very suited and booted. And I saw this woman who was just like, just very unapologetically, you were not in a suit.
Right.
And you literally got on the stage and exuded this confidence. And I wanted to ask, have you always been like that? Is that you? Is that the way you are?
I have always been my own person, for sure. And I was very, very fortunate early in my career to work with a CEO who encouraged that and who really counseled me to not be something different, right? To be myself and to, bring my authentic self into the workplace, and that frankly could be a superpower for me if I chose to do that as opposed to a liability. So I was really lucky because I think not everyone is fortunate to have someone at a very formative time in their kind of professional development stress that for them. And it's very easy to want to blend in and, want to leave things at home that might not be the stereotypical professional in the workplace approaches. So I feel very, very lucky because, I may have been dressing and being a very different way if I had not had that fantastic mentorship so early in my professional development.
And do you think because that so many women out there, even now, still feel that that's how they should be? I mean, practically every woman I saw was in the sort of skirt suit. And that maybe, as women leaders, to be able to say to others, hey, listen, it's okay.
It is. I think we have a responsibility to say to the others that it's okay, because I agree, I still see it. And that was my instinct at the time as well. I mean, the reason that I had that fantastic intervention with that CEO is because I was stepping into my first really senior executive role in a role that I felt was that mold of I need to be in the buttoned up, pantsuit or skirt suit every day with my hair either, really pulled. I had very long hair at the time, either like really pulled back and exactly, or I need to cut. I now cut it because it's easier, and because that is the instinct, right? Because you look around, right? If you look around at the role models in those roles, typically, even today, that is what they look like, whether it's male or female. But I think it's important to continue to deliver that message. And I think those of us that are in those positions and have that opportunity, I think that's a gift we can give, the next generation of leaders coming up behind us. That it's a different world. And I think it's one where we've found, and there's so many studies around organizational behavior that support this, that authenticity in the workplace leads to better outcomes. Those leaders that have a real authentic style of leadership tend to have better performing teams, right? And outcomes for their organization. So there are a lot of data around this now. And so if you just take that to the next level, right, that should extend to how we physically present in the workplace, right, and what that looks like. So, I'm glad I worked with someone years ago who was ahead of his time and how he thought about and recognized kind of like your example of being at the Bio Conference and standing out because you were in your orange, colorful, very much you outfits, that it is an opportunity to stand out also. And there are also professional benefits of standing out and not being, lost in a crowd and being memorable.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to go back to the beginning. How did it all start for you? Did you wake up one morning and say, I'm going to change the face of women's healthcare? Or was it a more gradual thing? Or did you want to be a firefighter initially? And then how did your journey start?
It was definitely more gradual. So I actually, like when I was in high school, I wanted to be like an actress. I mean, I was really into all that, right? Like I just, and that was my dream. But I think fortunately also for me and for the world probably too, but I fortunately worked with, I had a physics instructor in high school who really encouraged me to think about the sciences and who helped me understand in a way that often at that stage in development, you don't really understand what the possibilities are with science. Like, what does that really translate into other than the things we've all kind of maybe heard about at that age? So I fortunately had a high school teacher who encouraged me to study engineering, introduced me to the field of biomedical engineering, which I hadn't really heard about, so recognize that there's this whole area of research that could lead to new medical interventions that were really unique and different. And so I did go on and study that, and I studied biochemical engineering in graduate school, and went right into this industry of drug development, and initially in my dream job at the time of being the person doing the development work in the laboratory, creating and scaling like new products, therapeutics to help people, but realized pretty quickly that I loved the field of science for sure. And I very much wanted to be working directly in the drug development industry and bringing new pharmaceutical innovations to society, but didn't want to be the person literally in the laboratory doing the research. So I went and got my MBA, and then transitioned into roles in sales and marketing initially, launching really innovative specialty products for a variety of indications. And then ultimately also got that opportunity to move into a chief financial officer role, which is where I had that fantastic mentor who encouraged me to, bring my authentic self into that, and other operating roles over time, chief operating officer, and again, in a lot of different therapeutic categories. And I did though have one day, and it was kind of one of those one day things, that sort of epiphany moment of, wow, I've worked in so many different therapeutic areas, but I've never worked really super directly in women's health.
Right.
And a couple of the products I worked on, I would very much categorize as women's health. They're conditions that primarily affect women, like rheumatoid arthritis and fibromyalgia. And in fact, those were two of my favorite development programs to work on. And it was very empowering to be involved with the patient organizations and the women who were, living with those conditions, and where you could really see what a difference the therapeutics would make. So I just started thinking about how funny I haven't done more work in women's health. And I was at a point in my career where I had an opportunity to make a change. And I thought, okay, I am not someone who aspired to be a CEO. That was not on my list of dreams. So I was really just I would love to be a chief financial officer or chief operating officer, or maybe even president at a company that is doing work in women's health. And I was so disappointed to not be able to find a company doing that work broadly the way I wanted to, right? Not a single product, but really, thinking about the space and what is the difference we need to make in improving the health and well-being of women across a lot of different points in her life and types of products that can make a difference, whether it's contraception, right, in that reproductive age, or during menopause, or fertility during her maybe, maternal health journey. So long story short, I did some different things to kind of learn about the space and get experience, including a wonderful stint working in making sure great innovative products were making it to women in Africa, Asia, Latin America. But definitely one day then said, I need to continue working on new products, new innovations, new therapeutics. And if no one else is going to do it, I'll just start the company. And it was literally like on a Saturday morning,
what shall I do today? Shall I go shopping or start a company?
Yeah. And it was, and and I'm glad, honestly, I didn't think too long about it, because it's hard, it's hard work, right? Building something from scratch. But I literally did. I woke up on a Saturday morning. It was one of those very cliche, I should stop wondering who's going to do this, and I should be the change I want to see in the world, and I should just do it myself. And I have a very supportive partner, and he said, yeah, that sounds fun. Why don't you go do that? You've never done that before. You should go do it. And so I did. On the Monday, went in and resigned from the role I had at the time and started the company. And that was back in, summer of 2015.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I was going to ask you, you've actually already answered it for me. There wasn't a plan. It wasn't, so my ultimate goal is to be a CEO, and I'll do this to go there, and this to do that, and that to do that, and that to do that, which is always the best way, by not having that. I always find that plans are...
Right. I totally agree. I think so many people try to micromanage their professional trajectory, and I frankly think that can be very limiting. My professional journey has taken lots of twists and turns, and I talked about some of them a little bit, right? Where I went and got my master's in biochemical engineering, and I worked in research, and then once I was in that role, I realized, this is not the role for me. And I very serendipitously decided where to go next, because in that work, I was working on one of the first ever recombinant therapeutics for hemophilia. And it was like one of the early biologics, basically. And I remember at the time getting to interact a lot with the marketing people who were trying to understand, well, what is this science and how do you really make it? Because they were trying to create their materials. And so I got introduced to this marketing function. And so when I decided I didn't want to be in research, what do I want to do next? That was the only other thing I knew, right, on the business side. So I went to get my MBA to focus in pharmaceutical marketing. And that is what I then went on to do after that. And then, kind of serendipitously was in an opportunity where the business unit that I eventually moved up and became vice president of sales and marketing for a particular therapeutic product that ultimately got. It's interesting.
That's latest. Cut this bit. That'll go. Yes, that's
that. Yeah,
I think that is our. That I've got a 3:30 guest.
Exactly.
And she's probably testing, but thought, whoa, I'll get on.
Exactly, the link. There you go.
So anyway, take two on that.
But, take two. So I, marketing was the only thing I knew. And so I had this vice president of sales and marketing role was the next thing I'd gone into. And we were divesting my business unit, which I helped to do for a very favorable sort of, divestiture of that unit. And the CEO of the company from which we had divested the unit said, I really want to keep you on the team. I don't want you to go with the divestiture, but we don't need a vice president of sales and marketing because we just divested that product. But we do need a chief financial officer. And would you like to step into that role? So it's a great example of if I was on a very sort of meticulous, like I want to do this and then I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do that. I don't think I would have felt comfortable saying yes to that opportunity because that was a real digression from what I thought my career trajectory was going to be. But I didn't look at it that way. I just kind of looked like, oh, well, that's an interesting door that's just opened.
Yes.
And, let's go through and see what that is. So I do think sometimes, when we're a little too in what our roadmap is or what the goal is we're trying to get to, that we might not be eyes wide open, right, about opportunities that have actually come our way that could be fantastic. And that really was, I don't think I'd ever be comfortable being the CEO today had I not spent that time I spent several years as a chief financial officer professionally, 13 years. I don't think I would have ever been comfortable in the role I'm in today without that experience on the finance side of the business.
Well, because it gives you kind of came out of it with this all-round. It's,
Exactly.
Rather than like I've spoken to a number of people who've gone the scientific route and they've developed a product and then they've become the founder of, and to automatically be I'm the CEO because I was the founder of this company, so I'm going to be the CEO. And for fear of repercussions, always necessarily the best CEOs because of being the founder,
Right, because there's so much and that's why I think I feel comfortable. And I think that's why, even though it sounds like sort of a flippant, I woke up one morning and said, I'm going to do this company and be the CEO. That was really the culmination of, I've done the research part.
You've done everything.
I've done the sales and marketing part. I've done the finance and the operations. I've fundraised, right? I've been side by side for a long time, very closely with CEOs. I've seen it all. I think it would be, I think it is so hard for the CEOs. It's hard enough for me, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be really hard for the CEO that hasn't walked in the shoes of some of those roles, because then you don't know what you don't know.
And so much of it has to come, you either have to hand everything and trust in your CFO, your COO, whatever, whoever your other leadership people are, because you have to be, what's the word I'm looking, you have to be humble enough, I guess, to say, I don't know. I'm going to trust you to do this for me. I need to keep control of my company and I want to have the control. But, so I don't know whether it's a good thing or not. It's very hard.
No, or not. Yeah.
So
it
I
is
think
hard.
the path,
whereas I can,
certainly the path you took would be a natural progression into to where you are.
Exactly.
So fantastic.
Exactly. And it does allow me to on the one hand surround myself with real deep subject matter experts, right, in those areas, because I obviously don't try to do it all, and I have a fantastic team. But at the same time, I think it puts me in a position where I can ask some really relevant, I can help promote diversity of thought and exploration of different, perspectives, because I also have a nice foundation in what they're doing. It's good.
Excellent. Which brings us very nicely into what you're doing now. So, as you mentioned, you've been the founder, CEO of Daré Biosciences since 2015. What has that journey? What have the challenges been during those kind of 9 years?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I started the company really because I felt like there were a number of really pressing unmet needs in women's health, and unmet needs for which we felt we actually had a good idea of how to address them, right? There were therapeutics already in development that had real promise for these conditions, but an industry commitment, a pharmaceutical industry commitment to development in women's health a lot of these really promising opportunities and ideas were stagnating, right? They just weren't advancing through development without a company to kind of pull them through and push them forward. And so that was really the vision behind starting Daré, is, creating what is really a roll-up of a lot of interesting assets, not invented here at Daré, but that we've started first with what's the problem we're trying to solve, and creating that target product profile, right? If we were going to solve that problem, how would we, if we got to blue sky the solution, what would that look like? And then go look, well, has someone already started that work, right? Has someone already innovated along those lines? And then typically the answer was yes. And we would then go and meet with that company and see if we could be helpful in moving it forward and build the portfolio that way. And then really where we focus on then is advancing those products through development. So that was really the vision behind Daré, and wanting to work very broadly, right? Not just one small part of women's health or not just one product. We really felt that by building a very deep vertical across a variety of therapeutic areas within women's health would really give us a lot of competitive advantage in terms of how we advance the products, a lot of regulatory expertise, a lot of commercial insights. So we work in contraception and vaginal health and sexual health and fertility and menopause and, maternal health as an organization. So that was the vision. And so obviously you don't wave a magic wand and have all the products and all the funding immediately. So when we started the company in 2015, me, and of course I brought along some co-founders, takes a village. We started with one product, right, opportunity, and it happens to be our contraceptive. We have a non-hormonal contraceptive that's in phase 3 right now, once a month hormone-free contraceptive. So we started the company around that product. And in terms of, a first kind of challenge we had was raising money.
Yep.
And, getting people interested in investing in women's health and investing in contraception, right? The first product candidate was contraception. Long story short, we started the normal way people do. It's a private company, and you go to, venture capitalists and investors that can invest in private company. And long story short, our model was a little different from what venture capitalists were accustomed to seeing. We were wanting to do a roll-up, right? We weren't building a company around thing. I wasn't a founder or CEO in the sense that I didn't invent something in my lab that now I wanted to take forward this one thing. We really had this bigger vision, and pretty quickly realized that probably better for us would be to be publicly traded, so that investors could have an opportunity to, make an investment and have a broad portfolio where that can really be helpful. When you're publicly traded, to have lots of development opportunities and ultimately revenue generating opportunities for the company. So we went public in 2017. We're listed on the NASDAQ. We went public via a reverse merger, which is it's basically a way to merge into a cancer company that was having development difficulties, really didn't have anything more they could do with their products, that were not performing in the clinical studies, and we're looking for a new opportunity for their investors. And once that happened, we were able to bring in the rest of the portfolio. We now have 10 plus products in development, and we now have one FDA approved product as well that we've advanced through, which is very exciting, through development. And that was the way we were able to do that, was being publicly traded. But there's also, it's a lot of work being a publicly traded company. There's a lot of reporting requirements and responsibilities that we have. But working the way we are in women's health, we think that's really the best direction to go. And it's really allowed us to get to, like we said, the woohoo of having our first FDA approval. And we have entered into collaborations for commercialization. So we didn't have to stand that up ourselves. We can really focus on what we do really well, which is moving products through development. So, Organon has our first FDA approved product, and they've launched that. And we have a commercialization collaboration already in place with Bayer for our contraceptive that's in phase 3 right now.
And I do want to touch on, I did a woo because it's a big thing to have got.
Oh, it's a big thing.
Seriously.
We are in a select group of companies. I read
I read an article recently, and I probably haven't got the numbers exactly right, so please forgive me, but for 15 years, something like 600 products have been FDA approved, and about 42 of them have been for women's health. Is that...
Yes. I mean, I'm sure those statistics are right. They sound right. And, drug development, I mean, it's not an easy industry in general, right? Like we don't do the easiest work.
Yeah.
Drug development is complicated. It's a highly regulated industry. It's an expensive industry. I mean, just big picture statistics, right? Just general statistics are, only 8% of products like make it to an FDA approval, right? Product concepts make it to an FDA approval to begin with.
Yeah.
And even if in the case of our first FDA approval, it was a product that had already been, like the active had already been approved, in another form, still then only 13 or so percent, right, make it to an FDA approval. So we're in an industry that in general is hard. And then to your point, specifically about women's health, then when you then take the subcategory of maybe working in an area where there hasn't been as much innovation, what that means then by definition is, the regulators, maybe they're seeing now something for a first time at the FDA, right? If there's not something approved already for the indication, that's more work, right? And the timelines are going to be a little bit longer, as they should be, because everyone's got to think together, right? What is the right path, right? If the first time we're going to approve something for this indication, what should the regulatory hurdles be, right? What should you have to demonstrate? So it's just going to take longer. And so, yeah, I think it is a big deal to get something FDA approved in general. And it's also definitely a big deal to get something, something new out there for women.
For women, absolutely.
So we are very proud.
Yes.
And we want to keep doing the good work.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and you should. One thing that interested me when I was looking at your website and things, you have a very high proportion of women on your leadership team and on the board as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
What impact has that had on the work that you do and being able to move forward with the work that you do?
Yeah. So, I think in general, it's really important as a leader to really strive to have diversity within your organization. And we've definitely made great strides. I think we still have more work to do in that front, but I think it has to be intentional and it has to be a priority. And the reason being, again, there are great studies to show that having that diversity of thought and companies that really prioritize that diversity of thought does lead to better outcomes, right? Performance and economic and success outcomes. So it's really, really, really important. And I'm also a very firm believer that, however, just because we're working in women's health, the team should not be 100% women. It is healthcare, right? Like this is healthcare and everyone should care about it. And it should be relevant to everyone.
We right? have, just so you know, I will stop this bit here.
I saw it yeah.
They assure me that even if the screen freezes and your mouth isn't moving or whatever, and the words aren't coming out, that when it uploads, it's going to be perfect. So
okay, perfect. Okay.
We'll just hopefully just be able to cut this bit out as opposed to losing.
Good to know.
A great piece of information. But I don't know whether it's worth, once I get you back, just kind of repeating that last thing we can snip in just in case.
Yes, I will. Yeah. Yeah. So, so that diversity of thought is really important. And I have had people, so I've worked really hard and intentionally to make sure we've got diversity on our board of directors. We've got diversity in our leadership team. Like I said, I don't think our work is done. I think we can always do better, and I strive to do better as well in that. But I've also had people ask me the flip, which is, why do you have men on your board, or why do you have men on your leadership team if you're working in women's health? And I think that is really unfortunate, quite frankly, when people ask me that question, because this is healthcare, right? Yep. Just like in any other areas of healthcare, we don't expect, someone to be developing a drug for a rare disease, for instance, to have the disease themselves. We don't expect that, right? You can still do fantastic work for people, and you need that diversity of thought. So, but I did feel, having said that, a responsibility, though, as a women's health company. I for sure wanted to give women the opportunity to be on my board, right? And create opportunities for women. One of the things that's often hard in terms of getting on your first public company board is that you weren't on another public company board, right? Previously, recruiters often, right, want to show that they have identified a candidate that already has that experience. So one of the things that we were purposeful about was, not requiring that, right? Let's remove that barrier to entry. And as long as the person is qualified to be on our board in terms of the other things in our matrix of what we want, then, they should be eligible. And by doing that, it's really given us an opportunity to, have some women on our board where this is their first, experience on a public company board, and, created that opportunity.
But they can bring those different experiences with them. It's again like
yes,
almost like the career part of it is. It's not a prerequisition that this is what it's going to look like.
Exactly,
because of how different people can bring in different things that react to that. So that's
exactly,
yeah, I totally understand that.
Exactly.
And so, what do you see in the future for Daré? Now, what's your next goal? What's happening next for you?
Yeah, well, we want to very much continue to be making a difference for women. And the best way we know how to do that is continuing to advance, really innovative products through clinical development and regulatory approvals, and really challenge the status quo, right, of what women in particular have accepted in their healthcare today. So, as we think about contraception, where we have a product in phase 3 right now, it's thinking about how can we give more hormone-free options to women who, maybe hormones aren't their choice for contraception, and how can we develop something that meets her needs and her requirements in terms of efficacy and ease of use. So this is a monthly hormone-free product. So how can we change the thinking around that? We're looking at treating arousal disorder in women, which there's nothing FDA approved for the condition. Prevalence in terms of the population of women that have the condition and are distressed and are seeking treatment is very comparable to erectile dysfunction.
Yeah.
And yet we've had and this is similarly a physical symptoms, right? Inability to attain or maintain a physical arousal response, and very analogous in that way as well. And yet there have been treatments for ED for 28 years.
Yeah.
And, we're still lacking here. So, some of our work is also in saying, we can do this, right? There's no reason. We know the biology, we know the pharmacology, let's make it happen. And conditions like menopause as well, where, the newest science coming out is reinforcing that hormone therapy actually does make a lot of sense for a lot of women, but we have yet to have options available that really meet kind of the ideal of what the guidelines are recommending for hormone therapies. And so, trying to just make those things available. So as I think of the next several years, at Daré, it's really around, very simply, right, looking at the standard of care today for women, looking at what the standard of care should be, and reshaping that, right, and making sure we're moving things forward that can do that. And really with a focus on, there are so many innovation opportunities where we know the active pharmaceutical ingredient that we need to put to play. It's been well studied. We just need to do the work, right? And we just need to do the work, and that's what we're looking to deliver, so that we can have some of these great first in category options for women that are deserved.
I know for me, HRT saved my sanity for the time that I was on it. It was just, it was like, okay, no, I do not ever want to come off this. And obviously, when I moved here to the US, my doctors in the UK said, well, you're going to have to come back at least every 3 months before you can, get prescribed. And I would perhaps suggest that you start the weaning off process now, because that may not be practical to do. And actually, I'm very grateful that I did, because obviously once COVID hit, I couldn't.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I couldn't leave.
Yeah.
And that was for almost 2 years. So trying to go cold turkey off of HRT would probably
would have been hard.
Would have been difficult.
Hard. Yes.
Of that. And I think, you know, it's absolutely right what you say. There's so much when things aren't right for men, or they're not working, that it almost seems to be, you know, straight away something's out that can help with it, and something appears that can suddenly do that. I don't know whether it's that women don't talk about it, so therefore it's almost one of, well, is there a need? We don't know there's a need, but there genuinely is a need in areas. It's just not vocal enough to then be marketable, or for somebody to say, hey, there's a profit in it. Because I'm pretty sure if somebody was able to say, there's a profit there, we can make money out of this, they'll be very quick to approve it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If we look back at, I totally agree. So if we look back at Premarin, which is one of the first hormone therapy products, it was a $2 billion product, you know, more than a decade, 20 years ago, right? Think about that. Like, so there's a need, and there's a market, and there's a demand. I think part of what has happened, and I'm very happy to see it changing, but part of what I think has happened is that, to your point, many of these conditions are just part of being assigned female at birth, right? Having to think about contraception or going through menopause. They're not diseases in the way that we think about disease, right? And needing treatment. So one, you have the fact that, you know, women weren't even required in clinical research until the mid-90s. And two, the fact that so many of these conditions are just part of being a woman. And then three, many of the conditions involve kind of reproductive health, and maybe conversations that we're not normally having openly, right? Even necessarily with our friends around maybe sexual pain that's happening because of menopause, right? We're just not talking about it. We may think like we're the only one. There's stigma, embarrassment. And I do think it's interwoven then with having new drugs and new treatments and new pharmaceuticals, because if you think about, actually, let's use erectile dysfunction as the example. Men weren't talking openly about their erectile dysfunction until there was a drug and an advertising campaign that the pharmaceutical industry, education campaign, that then made the conversation very accessible, right? To suddenly have someone on, at the time it was Bob Dole on TV, but have someone prominent on television talking about that they have the condition. It removed the stigma. It opened up the conversation. So I think similarly, like the more innovation we see in women's health, the more that women will feel comfortable having the conversation. And the more that women have the conversation, the more as an industry, everyone will recognize there's a need here, there's a market, we need more innovation, and there is the demand, right? Women are talking about it, they want it, and they're going to use it, right? And providers identify it, want to treat it, and they're going to prescribe it, right? It all has to kind of come together.
I'm hoping that this goes through.
I think it will. I keep seeing fun. Like uploading.
Yes.
I keep seeing that it's uploading.
Yes. So somewhere it's going somewhere in the cloud, and then we'll see what happens. Well, listen, I'm so grateful for the time that you've given us.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity.
It's been absolutely fascinating. You know, I think moving forward with women's health, there's so much more, and so many more companies are also coming forward with that. You know, I think that this is something that, instead of doing like a clinical trial, and this is purely just a me thing, instead of doing a clinical trial on a specific product, doing clinical trials on a concept, and the trial involves several bottles of wine and women sitting around talking about it, and suddenly it becoming so much less of a stigma that, you know, marketing companies say, this drug needs to be produced because there's definitely a market for
that.
it.
Yes,
so
there's a market for it.
If you ever start one of those kind of clinical trials, sign me up.
Sign you up.
I will be there, no problem.
I love it.
And if it has to be an on-site in San Diego trial, then even better.
Well, there is, yes. Now that you've seen how fantastic it is here, yes.
Yes, it's beautiful. And you live in San Diego, right?
I do. So I'm spoiled.
Lucky lady. So, well, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. It's been fascinating.
Thank you.
And I look forward to continuing seeing the success of Daré and whatever you're going to do next. Maybe be on Broadway now that you've done all of this.
Now that I've done this.
Once you've moved forward with this, then go back full circle and say, I'm going to go on Broadway.
Exactly. Now I'm going to go. Yeah, exactly.
It's been great. Thank you so much, Sabrina. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.
Well, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. She Leads Biotech is brought to you by CNA International USA, a woman-owned boutique search firm based in New York. If you're looking to hire talent for your company or want support in achieving your career goals, please reach out to me at contact@cnaint.com. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And remember, the success of every woman should be an inspiration to another. So don't be afraid to share yours. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.